it's amazing. And when he's not working remotely with the Travel Massive team, you can find him windsurfing or at the beach. So it's a pretty rough life for Ian. Please welcome him on stage.
I've got a couple of notes here just to keep my mind on track for this talk. So today we're going to be talking about what's trending in travel. Now, I think you guys are the perfect audience to talk to because digital nomads are some of the most innovative travellers that I know of. And also, you're pioneering new ways of travel, which we're going to look at today. But first, a little bit of context about this talk before we hit the trends. I'm sure many of you have heard of Travel Massive, and there's a number of members at the festival here this week. We're the world's largest network for travel content creators, startups and professionals with more than 100 chapters globally. So we've got an online platform here, travelmassive.com, where our community connects online and we showcase new projects and startups every week. And the reason I'm showing this is that I'm really proud to say that Travel Massive has been made right here in Bansko with the help of my colleague Maria. I'm sure almost everyone here who lives in Bansko knows Maria, and so together Maria and me make up the core team of Travel Massive, and we've been working 100% remotely on this project together. You'll find Travel Massive members all around the world. We have about 80,000 members in our community, and we host a lot of meetups, and so Travel Massive really started as a meetup community for people who work in travel, who might be a travel blogger, building a travel startup, to actually kind of meet in person and online. Just to give you a few examples of our community, here's some meetups in Toronto, Dublin. You'll find Travel Massive meetups in Berlin, Lagos in Nigeria, Cape Town, in Uzbekistan even, Mumbai, and also in Shanghai, which has just recently opened. All right, so let's hit the trends. So the way that we sort of did this is Maria and me looked at hundreds of projects over the last few days that we've featured on Travel Massive over the past 18 months, and we came up with a list of trends that we think are really interesting, and we hope you guys find it interesting as well. And so the takeaway from this talk for you guys is that if you're a digital nomad, hopefully you can find an app or a startup or something interesting that can help you on your travel as a digital nomad. And if you're working in the travel industry or you're thinking about doing something in travel, these trends might give you some inspiration and ideas. And we've also put this list online with links to all of the projects that we're going to talk about. So get the QR code there or type the link in down below. If you're following on the Travel Massive live stream and you can't see this QR code behind me, we've put a link on the event description on YouTube and on Travel Massive, which you can find. So I'll also put this QR code at the end of the talk if you find anything interesting, and of course take screenshots as we go along. So everyone's ready? Yep? All right. So starting off with our first trend. So you might not know this, but 1 in 5 people have some form of illness or disability that affects or impacts the way that they can travel. In Queensland, which is in Australia one of the largest tourism destinations, the government there actually announced that 2023 was the year of accessible tourism. You might not sort of think about it, but it is actually a really big industry where people who need accessibility to get into venues or to travel need assistance. And so the size of this market is about $400 billion if you just look at the United States, Europe and Australia. We've featured a number of projects on Travel Massive sorry, I'm just starting my timer. We've featured a number of projects on Travel Massive such as Wheel the World and Getaboutable. They are platforms to find accessible travel accommodation and experiences. And one of the projects that I really like is called the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower Project. So this started at Gatwick Airport, and what you can do is you can wear a lanyard or a sunflower badge, and what that does is that identifies discreetly that you might have a disability and you might need help to get through that airport. And this project actually spread around the world, and there are now hundreds of airports and places around the world that are part of this Disability Sunflower project. I'm just going to get a drink. I've got something here. Okay. So you can check out all these projects on the Travel Massive website. Okay, so our next trend is Nomad apps. So obviously I think a lot of you guys use Nomad apps, and in fact there are some founders of Nomad apps such as Nomadigo. I think Ben is here, and his founder, and also Soleil from MapMelon. But what's really cool about this is that the digital nomad community is obviously very tech savvy, and you guys have built your own apps to be able to connect with each other and build online communities that also help you connect offline. So we think this is really cool. We've seen a lot of interesting apps being built within the Nomad community. Again, you can check them out on Travel Massive. Next thing is a trend that obviously is pretty obvious to a lot of you, which is the co-living revolution. I'm just curious who here has done co-living before. So yeah, probably at least half of you. I think the shift from being lonely in an Airbnb and wanting to actually live and work together is definitely a trend that has been pioneered by digital nomads. So again, on Travel Project, Maria, if you want to check that out. Also, we've included Nomad Stays and Flataway, and Bobby just spoke about Flataway. They're not technically co-living platforms, but I think that there's definitely companies that are helping innovate in this space and are helping build that co-living revolution. Our next trend is slow travel. So slow travel is probably the original form of travel before airlines were invented and you can go anywhere in the world, in 24 hours. But really what this is about is this is sort of conscious travel. It's a conscious decision to stay longer in a destination, not just hop around and sort of do the bucket list. But it's also about trying to reduce your carbon footprint or your impact. So slow travel is about two things: it's sort of staying longer in a destination, but it's also how you get there. So a lot of people who slow travel are now kind of opting out of flights and using trains and buses to travel around. We've just worked with a company called Untours, which is probably one of the first slow travel companies that started in the 1970s, and we've worked with them to build the slow travel network. So if you're a content creator or a travel blogger and you have stories to tell about slow travel, then have a look at the slow travel network, because it's a way for you to be able to tell your stories within this space. Next up, really in terms of as a travel trend, the context here is that at the turn of the century, the population in Africa exceeded that of Europe, and it's now grown to a population of about 1.4 billion people. But also what's happened in the last decade is that 500 million people in Africa are now connected to the internet. So there is a huge amount of digitization that is now happening within travel, where traditionally tour operators and guides and other experiences in Africa were not online, and now all of this digitization is bringing travel within Africa online, and there is a huge amount of venture capital flooding into Africa for local startups to build apps and services around travel. If you happen to be traveling in Africa, I'd recommend to check out our Travel Massive chapters in Cape Town, Nairobi and Lagos. There are some really amazing people in those communities who are doing really awesome things in travel. Next up is affiliate marketing. Now this is sort of not really that cool, but I kind of think that affiliate marketing is becoming cool again. If you're not familiar with what affiliate marketing is, it's probably one of the oldest forms of monetizing content online. Basically, you're putting a link to something and earning commission from that. But, you know, traditionally, affiliate marketing, you know, in travel required a lot of sort of programming knowledge to be able to kind of make those links work. What's happened over the last few years is that some innovators have come into the space and made affiliate marketing really easy, because you now have no-code solutions that you can drop into your blog. Travel Payouts is sort of probably one of the largest affiliate networks in travel that connects hundreds of travel brands with affiliates. Also Safety Wing, and I know a lot of people from Safety Wing live here in Bansko. They've just launched a community platform for their affiliate program. And I'd also mention Stay 22, which is a really kind of interesting affiliate network for accommodation providers. So if you have content about different destinations, you can drop in an interactive map. And they have a really high conversion rate. But I think the trend here in affiliate marketing is that the successful affiliate marketing programs have built, you know, communities and support networks and education to really help people be able to monetize their travel content. Speaking about travel content, and this is sort of another trend that we're seeing on Travel Massive, is that travel bloggers are starting to monetize their content by actually offering their own tours. And this has been enabled by technology platforms such as Yuli and Indie Travel, which allow you to basically create your own tour, put that online, and not have to worry about, you know, handling the booking and the programming and running a whole sort of tech platform for your tour company. Also, an interesting company to look at is called Duffel. They're based in London. They're kind of like the Stripe of travel bookings. So they're actually allowing companies to be able to sell their own flights and ticket them online. So there's some really interesting travel tech that's going on in the travel space at the moment. Next up, and this is sort of a thing which I think is really cool, is around gamification. And I know we've got, I think, Daniel from Urban Challenger. It's a startup that's here, that's based in Bansko. But really, gamification is about turning cities into playgrounds. So if you could imagine that instead of following a tour guide around a city that's sort of telling you a story, you're actually creating your own adventure through things like challenges and scavenger hunts. And it really gives you a sense of sort of agency when you're visiting a city, because rather than sort of thinking, well, where do I go? Should I just walk around and take some photos? You're actually going on a really cool adventure and finding places that you never really would have thought of in a city. Okay, so our next trend, challenging. But what we've seen over the last few years is that there have been a lot of new entrants into this space. You know, travel is complicated, especially if you're a nomad and you're visiting lots of different cities and you have to keep track of flights and accommodation and information. And then if you can imagine, if you're doing group travel, how you organise group travel together. So there's companies in this space such as Troop Travel, based in New York, that are doing a lot of like a really good group travel planning app. But I think the innovation in this space that we've seen sort of literally explode in the last sort of 6 months is the application of AI into trip planning tools. So now these trip planning tools sort of have superpowers that they can understand your travel intent and your interests and give you really personalised recommendations and itineraries to destinations. The other thing that we're seeing is the power of maps. And so maps are sort of a universal language, right? But a trend that we're seeing is that people are kind of curating maps and publishing those maps with new innovative tools that really sort of allow travellers to find some sort of interesting niche that they want to explore. So as an example, Traveller Map is an app that you can use to find national parks around the world. Another really interesting one, and this might be, you guys might find this interesting, is called Soundprint. So Soundprint is an app that maps quiet places. So if you want to find a quiet cafe in Bangkok, for example, you can use Soundprint. So people actually go to different venues and they measure the sound level. So it's really cool, I think, for finding quiet places to work. There's also new map making tools. So Text2Map, they're a startup based in Berlin. Basically, you could give it a blog or an itinerary or anything that has text information, and it will just turn that into a map for you. You don't have to worry about manually finding the pins and dropping them in. So there's a lot of cool things happening, I think, in the mapping space. Next trend is micronations. I'm just curious who here has been to a micronation? Okay, a few people, including Palais. So micronations, they're sort of miniature countries. They're not really recognised by the UN, and they're often sort of created by eccentric people who have found a plot of land somewhere that no one wants to contest, and they're going to call it a micronation. And actually, I just became a citizen of a micronation this week for $20. There's a crowdfund called Let's Buy an Island, and they just bought an island off the coast of Belize. It's just, I think, a really kind of cool thing, and especially if you're digital nomads and you're traveling around the world, there are over 140 micronations that you could visit. So I'd recommend to check them out. There's a great podcast called Counting Countries, which is run, the founder, Rick Gazarian, interviews people who actually have created micronations. And believe it or not, there is even a conference for micronations called MicroCon, which is this week. So if you want to create your own micronation, you know where to go. And this is sort of our final trend, and I actually sort of think this is probably one of the most important ones. So if there's a key takeaway that I can give you as travellers is around impact. And obviously with climate change, we have really seen, the tourism industry has had a big focus in media around the impact of flying and mass tourism. And I'd implore you to sort of think about, as travellers, you can make an impact. You can make a positive impact or maybe a less positive impact based on your decisions. But there is a lot of innovation happening in this space of impact travel, and a lot of startups really working on how do we make impact travel go more mainstream. A lot of large travel companies have converted to B Corp certification to become more accountable. And there are also a number of venture funds and other organisations supporting people who are creating travel startups or projects in this space. So I'd leave you with this idea that to be a conscious traveller and think about your impact when you travel, and always try to do good. So that's the QR code. If you found anything interesting in this talk that you'd like to follow up, you'll find all the links to our projects there. And the last thing I just mentioned is this week we're hosting a Travel Massive meetup on Friday. We're just going to have a lunch. So if you're a member of Travel Massive, you want to come along, I'd love to meet you. Also, if you are interested in the travel industry or building something in travel, come along and meet us on Travel Massive on the Friday, and you can meet other people in our community. So that's it. So thanks very much for your time and listening to me, and open up to some questions.
All right, thank you so much, Ian. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Lots of good trends that my ideas are going. So let's open up to some questions. Just wait until the microphone gets to you so we make sure that the live stream can hear you. So I see it has been handed over to our first one.
Hi. So thanks for your talk here. How do you find about trends? I'm here.
Ah, here, right. Hello.
How do you discover trends?
That's a good question.
What's the strategy? Thanks.
Yeah. So what's the methodology? The methodology, I think, is so. On Travel Massive, we have an open platform where founders can publish their startups and their ideas. So it's sort of, I guess, a bit similar to, say, Product Hunt, if you're familiar with that. So we have hundreds of ideas on Travel Massive, and I guess it's a combination of looking at all of the projects, and then what we did is that you can start to see the same ideas in that space, being repeated, and I guess that forms the concept of a trend. So I guess part of finding trends is data-driven, as well as then I guess a gut feel, because I've been in the travel industry for 10 years. I've met hundreds or thousands of startup founders and heard about their ideas, and so I guess I just have a mental map in my head of what are some of the things that are trending in travel. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, cool.
What is the aim of that from your point of view?
I think I'm going to point to Palais over here, who is probably more knowledgeable about micronations, but I'm not going to get him to answer the question, but you could, if you put your hand up, Palais, you could talk to each other after this, because I think Palais has, what's interesting is that, when it's a reflection of our own society, and it makes you think about our own cultures and our own governments. So, I think that micronations are just sort of an interesting part of, I guess, destinations.
And a bit silly.
And a bit silly, yeah. I wouldn't take it too seriously.
Hey.
Hello.
I'm a tour expert and tour guide from Vienna, and I'm thinking about doing allowed to offer locations, for example, for money, if you have a travel agency.
Yes.
And to found this, you need another background. Even if I'm coming from tourism, you need more, and I cannot get it. That's the problem. So I'm looking for another country.
Oh, okay. Another country that you could be a tour operator or a travel agent?
Tour operator.
A tour operator. I'm going to have to find the answer for you.
But how do, because we're talking about this, that people are organizing tours on Join My Trip, for example.
Yep.
But how do all the people do it? I mean, are they self-employed?
Model where you're not physically taking someone through a city, they're just using an app. And so I think that's one way. I don't think that you have to be registered to have an app that people can visit. I'm not sure if that's answered your question.
Okay, maybe I will come to the lunch on Friday.
Yeah, I think that's sort of more complicated around the regulations of creating a travel business, and there's different regulations everywhere. So I think I'd need to talk to you a little bit more and understand what you're doing. But I look forward to that.
Thank you.
Hello.
So I'm from Warsaw, and I was wondering how actually to promote a city that doesn't have that much sun, but it's still like amazing, lively, and like a great place to visit.
Okay. So the question is, how do you make a city more interesting to attract people? So in Europe, there's an initiative called the European Union Smart Cities initiative, and it's funded by the EU, and so this idea of a smart city is more of like an integrated city that might be using technology to make things like public transport easier, but also there's a touristic element to smart cities. So I would look up the Smart Cities initiative, and if you see me afterwards, I can give you a link to that, because then what they do is that there's, as a competition, there's a short list of cities, and then there's a winner. But what's really interesting about that is you can see how governments in cities are, building out programs for digital nomads, how they're trying to make it easier to navigate a city and live in a city. So maybe that's an aspect you could look at.
It's so funny because I come from couchsurfing where we did everything by ourselves. And I see more and more that actually working with government is actually a better way to go now. By the way, I'll be talking on closest to piano about worship. So you guys want to come? Let's talk about worship.
Okay. Hello.
Hi there, and thank you so much for presentation. This is extremely interesting. My name is Gabriella, and I work for Wi-Fi Tribe. So you have mentioned some really interesting travel trends, and I am wondering if you had to bet your money on one or two of them, where would you invest?
So if you had to bet your money on a trend, where would you invest?
Yeah, you mentioned a few apps, you've mentioned a few things, so.
Right.
Great,
I think the thing is that in terms of travel investment, unfortunately, travel investment goes into probably the more boring side of travel, which is travel tech and distribution, because obviously that's where the cash register is, in every transaction. So I would be looking at travel tech company, and then who knows, maybe I'll buy.
Thank you so much for
Okay.
running around the mic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.